Hi, welcome to Inside the Scary Mind of a Writer, and I'm Adina Lev, the writer. Today I'm going to be covering the topic of geographic egocentricism. I don't even know if that's a word. I might have made that up. I might have heard it somewhere, but it's a thing. Point an example. When something happens to you, it's monumental, it's big. It could be positive, it could be negative, but it's big. When it gets outside of your social circle, that same story is not so monumental. It's a curiosity. And if it makes it out of your community, that same story, it probably might not. People won't even heard about it unless it's anecdotal, relatable to them. What brought this about in my head was a newspaper article about this woman. She had found her teenage son drowned in a pond and she pulled him out. And the reporters had been there while she was still mourning the child. He was a young man, I think he was 18. But in her head, that was her child. And it occurred to me for the rest of her life, everybody in her family, their lives would be colored by this child's death. And within the same newspaper time frame, I was reading about a cold case that they were revisiting where this one person who had been the victim of a serial killer. And it was in my town. I hadn't even heard about it. And it was just a couple of years before I moved in. So those two articles converged in my head, and I came up with this idea, what if? So, into thine own self, you have the story of a young woman who's attacked and she's violently raped and beaten. And the cop that catches it, the detective that catches this case, he's runs an NCIC check. They had the DNA. He wants to see if this has been linked to anybody. And he stumbles on a serial rapist who has a set MO. He has a set amount of girls in a set amount of days, and then he moves on. And so far, he's struck in 6 states. And it's never brought up because it was big in that community, but it didn't reach outside the community as a major event. When he ties it all together, he now knows he has the victim, and the DNA links it to these other cases. So he already has a time frame. He has a deadline, and he knows that he has to save these girls in his community before this guy moves on to who knows where. So you're working in that time frame. And it just points out how we don't pay attention what happens to other people outside of our community. And it's always been this way. Biblical time people probably were the same way. So it's grabbing on those little straws and putting them together and creating a story out of that. Another part of the things in the scary mind is keeping the characters straight, keeping their egos straight. I read enough. Yes, I read a lot, as does probably every other writer in the world. I read a lot. I read a case study where 8 psychiatrists were given a profile of a young child and what had happened in his biography up to a certain point. And they were asked, what is your conclusion? What will this boy become? And they all came independently to the same conclusion that this young man would most likely become a sociopath or a psychopath. And they were all shocked but not surprised when they were given the biography. They revealed it was a biography of Hitler and his early childhood. And the whole consensus was that if you do these set things to a child at certain ages, this is probably the likely outcome you're going to see. So, with that in mind, it goes to the nature nurture idea behind some of these characters. I want my readers to look at a character and not paint them all bad, even though it's a bad guy, and not paint the good guy all good because nobody is all bad and nobody is all good. We all have instances where we are absolutely horrible. We have instances where that same person at some point can actually be a hero. So I cover that in my story development for the characters. That's the hard part, is keeping the characters and their reactions straight. A point, I do say that a lot. Point an example. I had a teacher once and she was very much into that clutch. Point an example. It's probably where I got it from. nature, nurture. Ice cream truck. You hear an ice cream truck and your mind immediately starts going for ice cream, ice cream. Admit it, you heard the ice cream truck in your head and you're already thinking, "Ooh, ice cream sounds good." Yeah, that's all your nurture. You were conditioned at some point that hearing that music resulted in a treat. Same with my characters. How were they nurtured? Into thine own self, you realize from reading the thoughts going through the rapist's head, serial rapist, that this is how he was raised. This is what he was taught, that this is normal behavior. So trying to keep that straight and trying to keep it in my head, even though I find him repulsive and I find his actions very, you want to take a shower when you're done hearing what goes through in his head. And I had to put that in there to make the character believable. So at the end of the book, you know what his motivation is. You know what was going through his mind. Same with the cops, same with the mother, same with the victims. You have to give their motivations to their reactions. And there is the challenge, keeping everybody straight so that everybody is independent, so that you don't hear me and my motivations as the underlying, you really believe that character is that character. So when you're seeing this, you're playing it through your head like a movie. That is actually how I read. I see a movie and I have to describe what's going on. And unlike movies where you don't get all the motivations, you don't get all the colorings behind the character, books, you can do that. As a writer, I can make you feel sorry for this guy. I can make you really hate him. And I can make you feel the insecurities behind the main characters, behind the heroes. And I can make you like the dog. So, To Thine Own Self, it's downloadable on Amazon. And please, I'm running it free right now. I think it's $1 if you buy it for unlimited reads. I would really like it if you would download it, read it, tell me your thoughts. And if you like this page, hit like, hit share on Facebook. And I'm really promoting myself as a writer. So I would appreciate anybody else who wants to help a struggling writer out to get her face and her name and her craft out there. So until next week, thank you for stopping in, and I hope you like this, and I will see y'all next week. Bye.